Thanks, Senator Sullivan. Look, I want to come back to Parliament House. What is the restrictions of flying over buildings now? A drone.
At the moment, the drone restrictions are based on location and altitude.
Okay.
And risk.
So, Dr. Alec, have you got them there? You got
And
them
risk.
right?
Yeah, the requirements that are generally applicable to all RPA operations prohibit operations which pose a hazard to property and people.
Okay, so let's get it out on the table. What is the law? What is CASA's rules about flying drones over buildings? Can I just can I zap a drone over this building, for instance, or your headquarters, as long as you're not within 3 nautical miles of the airport?
Well, may I?
Yes, go.
Yeah, with the exclusion of those situations which, as you said, are already prohibited for some other reason, the requirement is that you not operate a drone in such proximity to a building, in such a way, I should say, that creates a hazard.
Okay.
Now, so that's not a distance or a specific location, it's a result of the way it's being operated.
All right, so if I wanted to zap a drone over Parliament House, can I just sit there and zip it out from the car park or wherever, or do I have to? What would you do? What would you say to me?
To zap a drone, you mean bring one down?
I'm flying over Parliament House. I'm filming Parliament House and I'm filming the sporting fields where there might happen to be a rugby game on between politicians.
I'm looking at our app right now, and I see that is that Parliament House?
Correct.
Then Parliament House is within the control zone of Canberra Airport. So that operation is, in fact, not appropriate.
Illegal?
Well,
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So if I have footage of a drone floating over Parliament House, filming a game of politicians running around out here on a cloudy day, what would you do? Would you want to talk to the person who took that footage, or do we just say, "Oh, it's happened, don't worry about it"? Because you know where I'm heading. I think.
well, this is the kind of thing we would investigate if the information came to our attention.
All right, because we know that on the web you can go to one of the senators, and I'll say it, Senator Hanson, Senator Pauline Hanson, the leader of One Nation, has on her website filming of from a drone of Parliament House on a cloudy day, and then there was a rugby match down here between the Pollies who support Queensland and the Pollies who support New South Wales. So I'm raising with you now, through the Hansard, that I have a real concern, because you see, I have to be consistent. And it might be a bit of a dribble, but I've got to get this out. We cannot have one set of rules for politicians and sets of rules for other Australians, because we are no different. In fact, we should be upholding the rule. So how do I put a complaint to CASA that I would like to have this investigated? How do I do that? Do I have to put a letter and run around by the Privacy Act, or what'll happen?
We will take that request, Senator, and have it investigated. I was under the impression that we might have already, but I'd like to look at it to see whether, in fact, we have, because that was a public event, well, a publicised event, dare I say. But I will take it as a formal complaint and request for investigation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Carmody. Now, we have set, questions taken on notices 2 weeks. I don't expect you to come back to me tomorrow or the next day, and I understand that this is now an inquiry. For the purposes of Hansard, Senator Fawcett and Senator O'Sullivan, I wrote, not in my capacity as Chair of the Rural Regional Affairs and Transport Committee Reference Committee, but as a concerned senator, in respect to Senator Hanson also being filmed on television, scooting at I think it was Cairns, can someone help me out there? There was an investigation done. Can I ask questions of how that investigation went?
Certainly, Senator. You did write to us and we responded. An investigation was conducted, as you would expect, in accordance with our coordinated enforcement manual, and the investigation is now complete.
Yes, and I believe, I have it in front of me, from your good self signed off, Mr. Carmody, that as a senator, just ordinary Glenn Still hanging around here cannot be told what the outcome was because of the Privacy Act. So I'm now going to use my position as Chair of the Rural, Regional Affairs and Transport Reference Committee here in the Senate. I'd like the committee to be informed of what happened. How do I do this, Mr Cumming? Do we go into camera?
Senator, I might defer to my General Counsel on my right. My understanding is that that the nature of the fact that an investigation occurred was what would be publicly notified, and the fact that it had been resolved, but not the outcome where it would breach the privacy of the individual. But
Mr. Alex, throw your legal lines at me.
As a matter of good practice, we tend not to go into detail in hearings, and we would do that in respect of any individual.
Mr. Alec, I asked about information from a prosecution in Townsville. Now, you were prepared, and quite rightfully, you were going to. I know you're going to pull the legal stuff, but I'll use parliamentary privilege. We cannot sit here and have what appears to be, or could appear to be, one set of rules for politicians and one for others. And the public, the Australian public have the right to know. I don't care what her middle name is, I don't care whatever. I just need to know that if I'm raising concerns, which I have many times through this committee process, when I'm sitting at the hotel in Kununurra and there's father and son playing with drones less than a kilometre away from the end of the runway, why should a senator be treated any different? Now, you're going to have to really work hard to appease me that the rules applied to Senator Hanson as they have to any other normal Australian who may have broken CASA's rules.
I'm happy to say, A, that this particular matter was treated exactly as it would have been treated whomever was involved. And secondly, it's a matter for you, Chair, of course, that if the committee were to go into camera, I think we would much more comfortably discuss the details of this.
Okay, and I appreciate that, but I've also got my colleague in Queensland, my co-chair, who will be back here next week, and I will ask Senator O'Sullivan. I'm
back on air here now. Sorry, Chair, I'm back on air.
Okay, Senator O'Sullivan, we've been offered the opportunity to go into camera. Would you rather be here in Canberra to hear the evidence?
I'd be first interested in the grounds for going into camera. I mean, there's public interest in all of this. What's the grounds?
Dr. Alec?
Well, again, the grounds are simply a matter of practice, and that is, and we would defer to the committee if the committee required us to provide information in or out of camera. But just as a matter of practice, we tend not to provide information involving individuals and the outcomes of investigations, irrespective of who they are. It's not a privacy matter because providing the information in response to a requirement from a Senate committee would be an exception to the privacy provisions.
Senator, if I may just add something. Senator, since we publish our enforcement decisions on our website, we've commenced that since I returned to this role. It was something that was done when I was in the role in the past. We, as practice, in other words, treating all citizens the same, we do not reveal individual names on our website. We do companies, but we redact individual names for the same reason. So the point that I'm making, Senator, if I may, is we're being absolutely consistent. We were consistent. We ran our coordinated enforcement. Our enforcement experts went and spoke to the operator. Once they'd spoken to the operator, they came to a conclusion. They came back to us. Our coordinated once they'd spoken to the operator, they came back to us. Our coordinated enforcement mechanism applied. It was discussed in the coordinated enforcement forum, and then it was resolved. And it was done exactly the same way as we do everyone else, Senator, and that's the assurance I wanted to give you, was that that it has been absolutely consistent.
So unless the public want to look at an incident, so perhaps Senator Still's pub example, if they heard that there was an incident over there and they wanted to look on your website to see what the enforcement outcome was, they'd never learn who the dad and the boy were, but they would know there was an incident at a West Australian airfield, and the outcome was the person was fined, warned, whatever. If somebody wants to search your website for an incident at Cairns, could the public look for what the outcome was in that incident on your website and see what CASA's decision was?
The enforcement decisions would involve decisions taken by CASA to take particular enforcement action. Action that didn't involve formal enforcement a variation, suspension, cancellation, and imposition of a fine would not appear on the website because it doesn't fall within the category of enforcement. So when something doesn't happen, that's not published because the public isn't normally interested in what doesn't happen. But I'll say again that the processes that we use to assess matters like this are transparent to the extent that they need to be, and for the purposes of this committee's interest, they could certainly be.
Chair, can I?
Yeah, Senator O'Sullivan, I am seeking your
Chair, look, and you may need to consult with the Secretary. I'd be happy for this to go into camera for us to hear the evidence and examine it, and then decide whether we might take it back into a public arena.
Yes, absolutely. All right, because we cannot leave this one sitting out there. I mean, let's just touch base. When we have a normal prosecution, we don't have people on national television laughing and joking their way through what could possibly be contrary to CASA's aviation laws. So I would ask under the Senate's standing orders that we now go into camera, and then I suppose I better read the bit that goes with it, hadn't I?